The faults of people is maybe 10, maybe 20% of the personality. When I started focusing on the 80 to 90% that was good about that person, absolutely had no time to be critical, no time to be annoyed, no time to go back to that other habit that I had.
This is A Joyful Rebellion, the podcast that explores that moment you realize the life and success you worked so hard to create didn't come with all the fulfillment you thought it would. I'm your host, James Walters, and I want you to be the author of your own story. Each week, I connect with people who inspire bold answers to the question, what do I do now to create a life I love? If you're ready to start answering that question for yourself, you're in the right place. So let's start a joyful rebellion. My guest today is Paul Zolman. Around age 35, Paul became aware of his tendency to look for the faults in people rather than the good in them. And he wanted to break the cycle of criticism he inherited from his upbringing, so he created a game to demonstrate the principles of love languages. It's a profound way to learn all 5 love languages and to give them away to others. The system is so easy, in fact, that you can even train young children to do this. And spoiler alert, it's a game where everyone wins. The concept of the 5 love languages has been around for a while, but this is a fresh take that works with anyone in your life, which is why I'm excited for you to hear our conversation. Paul Zolman, thank you so much for being here on A Joyful Rebellion.
Thank you, James. It's my pleasure to be with you today. Looking forward to the conversation.
Oh, me too, because you have created, it sounds like a framework, and you've written a book about it that helps people understand better and interact with the 5 different love languages in a little different way that maybe they have before. So I want you to talk about that, how you came to that understanding, and what it is that people need to know in order to have better relationships.
Great question, James. I came upon it because I realized at about age 35 that I was stacking annoyance on top of annoyance on top of annoyance until I had a flash of anger. When I got to the top of that flash, then I come back down and start doing it again. And I thought, well, what am I so annoyed about? And it was always about other people. What are they doing? Why are they doing that? And I felt from my childhood, and it was a dysfunctional childhood, I felt that there were no boundaries. I could look over there and say what they're doing wrong. I could live their life where I could make their choices. Not true. And I realized I can't make anybody's choices, just like I can't bid love to come my way. I can't make people love me because it becomes a duty or an expectation. And both of those avenues, James, don't work when you're sending love out. So I had this critical mindset and I wanted to get rid of it. That's how it came about. So I started looking for books about love and how do I get to a loving mindset rather than a critical or an angry mindset. And I thought, well, if opposite of anger would be love. So let's try with the opposite. Let's try focusing on the opposite. Rather than focusing on what's wrong with people, is there a way that I could move and have that paradigm shift, James, to look for what's right with people? I know that I was missing a lot of the good of people because I was focused on what they were doing wrong, focused on their errors or mistakes, and then jumping on that and said, look at that. I didn't realize that, oh, whatever you send out, it's coming right back to you. Why did I want that? Why would I want someone to be critical of me in that same way? So all this is starting to come together. And I started reading a book called The Color Code. And I read that, went through it, and, everybody has whites and blues, yellows and reds. And I found all about that. But I really settled on the principles of the 5 love languages. And I really liked the principles, but I didn't understand it. From where I came from, that dysfunctional family that I came from, I'm number 10 of 11 children. And by the time my father heard on a date with my mom every Friday, by the time he heard about all the children, my mother probably started at the top. Number 10, he had stack. He was ready to blow. He had done the same thing. So it was a habitual thing that was passed out generationally, not genetic, but generational. That's just how we dealt with things that we were annoyed about. So I got annoyed and I felt like I was a target many times. One time I remember being black and blue on my rear end more than 3 weeks. It was just that type of really bad punishment. I didn't want to do that with my own children, wanted to get away from that. So as I'm reading these 5 love languages, I said, well, that's great, Dr. Chapman, but I don't have anybody. I was single at the time. I mean, his book was about a significant other. Find your significant other, find out what their love language is by taking this survey. Just didn't work. So I'm a bad guesser. And so we take the survey, and I said, Dr. Chapman, I am single. What am I supposed to do with this survey? Hello, I'm Gifts, James. What do you have for me today? It's just like kind of awkward to advertise that. And it just wasn't working for me. So those 2 things weren't working. So I actually thought, you know what, even as dysfunctional as my family was, James, growing up, we played games together. And that's when the family got together. That's when we started. There was still a smack talk, all the put downs, all the things that you would expect in that angry family. All those things were still there, but it brought us together. I thought, what if I could make these love languages a game? And so I contacted Dr. Chapman and asked him, are you licensing any of those icons or all of the icons for the 5 love languages that you're producing? After a couple of weeks, his attorney wrote back and said, no, we're not doing that right now. So I still like the idea. And I had an attorney in my neighborhood. I took the idea to him, and he told me this. Theory, like the love language theory, is not copyrightable. So they weren't doing it as a game. So I made my own icons and put it on a cube, made it a dice. So each one of these represents a love language: touch, gifts, service, words, and then the time. 5 love languages, 6 sides on the dice. The last one I named was surprise me. So James, there's just 2 instructions. You roll the dice every day. How long does it take to roll the dice? 2 seconds or less?
Yeah.
Whatever it lands on, that is the love language you practice giving away all day that day. All day to everybody. So as I'm single, I said, Dr. Chapman, who in the heck am I supposed to love? And now I realize, oh, I get to love everybody. James, for me, it was perfect because I needed something, a replacement behavior. Instead of focusing on what's wrong with people, which I'm looking to the right, now I'm focused to the left. What's right with people? And you can't be looking both ways at the same time. You can't do that. So as I'm focused on what's right with that person, what can I love about that person, I totally forgot to be annoyed, and have a flash of anger. It cured me almost overnight. Really, just over a 30-day period, I learned all the 5 love languages too by giving it away. Now what happened for me, James, is now I can see it when it comes my way, and I can respond appropriately. Dr. Chapman's absolutely right when he says that most people have a primary love language. When you give it away and you see them light up, now you've discovered what their primary love language or secondary love language is. No longer, James, do you have to say, excuse me, could I pause this relationship for just a moment while I have you take this survey so I know how to love you? Ridiculous and awkward. Don't have to do that anymore.
It's awkward. Yeah, that would be
I solved
awkward.
the problem.
That's fantastic. So what got you to reading the book in the first place?
Just the anger I had within myself of just always going over that synapse of always being critical, watching for what's wrong with people instead of what's right, wanting to overcome that tendency that was generational. Obviously, it was generational. My brother had it. My father had it. I had it. I wanted to get over it.
Definitely a case of nature versus nurture. Like you said, it wasn't passed down genetics. It's anger issue and critical thinking like that. It is definitely a nurture kind of thing. And I understand what you're talking about. Let me ask you this, because I'm just curious now, what was your profession? What kind of work did you do at that stage in your life?
I've been in accounting for a long period of my life. It took me 22 years to get a college degree. My father was just graduated from 8th grade and never went any farther than that. My mother was a high school graduate. Part of the problem, I think, is, as maybe you're alluding to this, James, education. And education really was the key to overcoming that tendency that I had as a child, or just education of relationships, learning more about relationships, learning more about how people feel, watching, observing how they react when you do something kind or loving, watching them light up, and having that desire to actually look at people and make their day, just help people on their way. It really is, for me, it's a joyful rebellion, so to speak, of a rebellion against what my parents taught me. But they didn't know any better. And it's not really their fault, because They're just passing on what they were taught by their parents. But I think that if we improve the education level, the literacy level of love, so to speak, that if everybody learned all 5 love languages, then we would be in a much better place. Now, I see what the problem was, James, with Dr. Chapman. He was a Baptist pastor, and couples would come to him, and the husband would say, well, I'm sending love her way. And the wife would say, oh, I'm sending love his way. They weren't seeing it. So like ships in the night. This way, by learning all 5 love languages, now you can see it. Now your eyes are open. Now you have a higher literacy level of love, and you can say, oh, they're loving on me. It's not my primary love language, but I still can respond to that. And it's that revolution.
Right.
So I was in accounting, a CFO of a public company, and currently I do merchant services.
Gotcha. The reason I asked, it wasn't about education. It was more about we train ourselves, and especially our careers are so impactful in the things we look for in the world. So I've talked to a lot of people who, for example, who have said that attorneys are some of the least happy people because they are always looking for what could go wrong. They're scanning a contract, for example, and they're looking for any loopholes. They're looking for what could go wrong. And so in accounting, you might not be looking for what could go wrong, but it's very orderly. And I'm wondering, and I'll ask you because I've never been an accountant. I have one, but I don't know what it's like to be one. I'm guessing you're looking for all the things that are not in place or not in order. And obviously your upbringing was one thing, but do you think that also maybe contributed to looking for that in other people?
Absolutely, James. And I think you're really pinpointing on something nobody's ever talked to me about, really. In 250 podcasts that I've been a guest on, nobody's really asked that question, but I really think you're hitting on something, that reconciliation and that matching effect of what you're sending out is what's coming back to you. That's a reconciliation thing. It's the law of the harvest. It's the law of karma. It's the law of attraction, whatever you want to call it. There's still going to be that reconciliation. Those laws were set in place before you or I were ever born. There's got to be a reconciliation for that. And a reconciliation is just making sure that what's on one side of the ledger is equal to what's on the other side of the ledger, so that there's that balance. You're balancing your checkbook. There's that reconciliation, that what you have left in your checkbook should match with all the other entries, all the nuances, the checks that maybe have not cleared or anything. All those nuances should balance exactly to what the bank has. And that reconciliation in my own mind, I needed to have that, because I needed to have that balance of, why am I sending out criticism and then I'm getting criticized? I couldn't understand why that was happening. So now I understand. Now I don't do that as much as possible. Obviously, I'm human. I'm not perfect. What's really funny about this, James, is that you make an announcement or you start doing something, and those people around you that are close, you haven't changed a bit, and they'll just start putting you down and start trying to tear you back down when you really have worked on getting to a different point in your life. And they're going to pull you down, or they're going to watch. They're going to just be very observant and watch. Let's see if he really does it, if he really means it. So you've got to be careful of that. Don't let him pull you down. Yeah. Focus on what you're going to do. And the whole idea of this, the whole focus of this, do something different than you have ever done before. Send out love every moment of the day, all day long, to everybody. And that's different than what Dr. Chapman had too. Dr. Chapman mostly was a romantic relationship. Because I didn't have a romantic relationship at the time I created this, I realized that this really is an attitude for life. This is a mindset for life, that you watch for what's right about people. Life's going to be a lot happier, not only for them, but for yourself.
Yeah, and turning it into a game was a genius thing, because it gave you some novelty, because you would roll the die. And what did you put it as part of your morning routine? You would have your coffee, roll the die, and just say, okay, I'm giving gifts today. And giving gifts could mean a lot of different things. It doesn't mean you have to have a closet full of trinkets that you're going to pass out to everyone you meet, but you could send an inspirational quote to someone, and that's a gift to them. It may not be necessarily a word of encouragement. It may be some other thought, but talk a little bit about how you came up with the idea of, hey, let's make this something that is going to almost create an adventure every day.
Absolutely. And I love variety. I don't know where that came from. Exactly, James. But I really like variety. And I couldn't picture myself taking a survey and being put in a box and having to tell someone, I love tacos, just feed me tacos every meal, every day of my life. And
Right. Yeah, that's true.
This solves the problem. It gives you a little variety of what you get to eat every single day. And it's the other thing about it is that being put into a box doesn't really help either, because on Christmas you expect a gift. On your birthday you expect a gift. Maybe on an anniversary you might expect a gift. So on that day you want to be gifts. You want to feel the love language of a gift possibly on that particular day. So I realized that every day is going to be just a little bit different. My wife doesn't roll the dice, but what she does is she watches, what's he doing today? And she's kind of this little detective quietly just going around watching, what is he doing today? What love language is he practicing today? And so it's really fun to include her in that way to make it happen. Today I rolled gifts, and it's interesting that you said gifts, because as you look at the dice and look at the love languages, just a hug could be a gift. Spending time with someone could be a gift.
Right.
Serving someone could be a gift. Maybe you just make them a dinner or something like that. You already mentioned a note or words could be a gift. So all of these actually could be a gift. And it doesn't have to be purchased. You don't have to have that closet of trinkets, as you mentioned. You don't have to do that. It all could be a gift. As I'm going along with this and how I just decided to pull it on the dice, I actually created a prototype. The very first prototype I had was one that had just a block of wood. It's about 2.5 by 2.5 inches cubed. And I just put laser engraved the love languages on there. And then the last one I put surprised me on it. What I found out, James, about this prototype is that as I rolled it, you see all these sharp edges, it would go clunk, clunk, or clunk, clunk, clunk. So it was almost like a weighted dice. If I wanted to do physical touch that day, I knew what to roll. I knew how to, this has to be over on the third side, and then it's going to go clunk, clunk. And so I'd get what I wanted that day. I realized that there's kind of an analogy there, James, that I hadn't realized before, that I was the one with the sharp edges. I was that one that had all that critical content and that critical tongue to put people down. And they said that you're supposed to do 5 positive things to 1 negative thing. How do you get there? How do you even get to that point of watching for what's the right things about people? And as I've done this over the past several years that I've had the die copyrighted, as I've done it, I've realized that this is so easy. This is just as easy as it was to be critical, to focus on what's right about that person. Some people are harder than others. They just are. Some people you have a hard time seeing because you have that hurt, or you have that violation of your space, or you have something in your mind. I can't see any good because that is so big. And you blow up these critical things in your mind. You blow them up bigger than life, that it clouds everything else that you can see. So the second one I did had the rounded edges. So as I'm doing the rounded edges, now it's more practical. Now it's a little bit easier to make it more random, as you mentioned, make it have more variety in the spice of life. And really, it's just whatever it rolls, I just stay on it. One day, my son rolled gifts, and he had that attitude that he had to go buy something. He said, nah, I'm not going to do that. Rolled it again, gifts the second time. He said, I'm not doing that. Rolled it again. It was gifts again. By the 4th time he's rolled gifts, he said, okay, I'm doing the gifts. And what are the chances that you roll gifts 4 times?
Really?
So people use it kind of as a divining tool, if you will. This is the mantra. This is what I'm supposed to be doing today. But most people just use it to set the purpose, set a theme for the day, so that it's always going to be a theme of love. Always. It's not any longer, I did the dishes, I'm done. It's not like that anymore. It's not an event. It's a whole process all day long. When you get to that mindset, it brings a new peace to the world, James. And that's kind of what we're looking for, that joyful rebellion. Get away from being critical. Media will be critical, and they teach us to be critical. TV, movies, everything's, people are watching and being critical of one another. All the talk shows are critical about one thing or another. We've got to get away from that and focus on what's right about people. And I think there's a lot of good that we're missing. I think that maybe the criticism or the faults of people is maybe 10, maybe 20% of the personality. When I started focusing on the 80 to 90% that was good about that person, I absolutely had no time to be critical, no time to be annoyed, no time to go back to that other habit that I had.
That's really important for anyone to hear. I asked you about your job and we got down the accounting road because on Wednesdays, I put on the podcast host hat, and that's what I do. But day to day, and for the last 30 years, I've been a photographer, and I photograph people, and people want to look their best. And I want to show people at their best. And something a lot of people don't think about my job, because when they see me, I just have a camera in my hand and we're doing our thing. And I'm trying to get them in the right energy to whatever we're trying to accomplish. But afterwards, when I'm looking at their face and I'm thinking about, okay, I want to make this person or these people look their absolute best. What I'm doing is I'm looking for all the things that I think would distract them or bother them about a photograph of themselves. So sometimes that's, oh, it was warm outside and they've got shine on their skin, or hair was out of place, or maybe the shirt they had a little bulge in a place that nobody really would want to see. So I'm not being critical to them. I'm not calling them up and saying, "Wait, why'd you wear that shirt?" But I am having to, I guess, compensate or figure out how to take down some of the things that are going to make them critical of themselves.
I love that. I love that, James, that you're putting everybody in a really good light. Maybe that's where the phrase comes from, is putting people in a good light. Is from a photographer. I love that you do that.
And that's where it starts. But then after that, I noticed myself going out into the world. I wasn't being outwardly critical, but I was thinking of all the things I would change if I was in charge of whatever it was. And I have to really separate myself. I have to be intentional to separate myself from that when I'm looking at someone and thinking, oh gosh, they've got some speck here or whatever it is. I know they don't want to hear that from me. So I've got to shut that part of my brain off. And what you're suggesting is really fun, because you're right. You can't hold two separate thoughts. You can't look in two different directions at the same time, just like you can't really have two different thoughts in your head at the same time. So this is a great way to accomplish that, to set an intention, a purpose, like you said, each morning. And before we started this conversation, I was really curious how you took the 5 love languages and applied that to non-romantic relationships, like in the workplace or in school. But now it totally makes sense, because this is just about what you can control, which is yourself. And it goes back also to one of those quotes everybody's heard, be the change you want to see in the world, right? This is exactly that.
Thank you, James. And I absolutely agree with that. And I learned that I needed to draw those boundaries that I didn't learn growing up, that I can't make any changes for that person. They really need to want and have to make the changes for themselves, just like I have to make the changes for myself. Even if you point them out, they're not wanting that either. Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that.
What I found is, if you can put an adjective, James, to the behavior that you're having, then figure out, well, what would be the opposite of that behavior? Then you've got the spectrum. Is one on the angry side of the spectrum, or is one on the loving side of the spectrum? When you can do that self-actualization, find out, where am I right now? What am I doing right now? Am I being sarcastic? Well, if I'm sarcastic, what's the opposite of being sarcastic? Words come to mind like authentic or genuine or true blue. All those would be words that would come to mind. Now, put all 4 of those words on the table. Do you want to be sarcastic? Are you still choosing sarcastic? Or are you going to be genuine and authentic and true blue? And most people would make that choice to be authentic. We talk about being authentic. That's what they would want. But if you understand those opposites in that way, patience versus impatience, it goes on and on. You could go through all those opposites back and forth, find out where you are on the spectrum. Then you can set goals to move toward the point where you want to be. And I think that's kind of a self-cleansing, kind of that reconciliation that I was talking about. That's how it really came to be. It's all a process of becoming a little bit better person, a little bit nicer, a little bit kinder individual every single day. And you're absolutely right about it being for everybody. This makes a person a person. There is no political party. There is no race or religion or sexual orientation. There isn't anything like that. A person is a person. You treat them like a person, someone that is worthy of love. It erases all the labels. It erases all those names, James.
That's really important, especially now, to start erasing as many labels as possible because oh my gosh, there are so many. And you wrote a book about this. So you made the die and then you wrote a book. You have a journal as well that I saw. With the book, I'm sure it goes into the concept and it goes into how you can exemplify each one of these languages. For people who may be new to it and maybe they roll the die and they do get gifts just like your son did, and they are thinking in a very linear way about what a gift is. Does the book help people understand, hey, a gift can be these 10 different things or 20 different things? It can be whatever you give.
Absolutely, James. The book's all about that. Many suggestions within the book of what you could do, many examples, many stories, real stories about what happened. For example, I tested it with a family of 5 children, and in that family, they chose that each individual in the family would roll the dice for themselves. I love that concept better than doing it as a group. I love the concept of each individual doing it because there's ownership then. I rolled this for that day. So they get to the 4-year-old. The 4-year-old's a boy. The day that he rolled physical touch. And he's jumping up and down, pumping his fist, says, yes, physical touch, physical touch. And immediately goes and beats up on his brothers.
Right.
He thought that was what the brothers were doing when they were beating up on him, obviously. And so the mother's trying to suppress all the laughter like you just did, James. and you can imagine, son, that's not exactly what we had in mind. But all the siblings are there too. So it becomes a teaching moment, James. All the siblings are right there. And said, son, a pat on the back, a hug, a high five, a fist bump, or create a fancy handshake, or a chest bump. Any of those would be appropriate physical touch. We don't beat on people. And you can make it a teaching moment. They'll remember that the rest of their life. So for children, wonderful way to teach appropriate ways to send out love all day long.
That's a great example. It ties right into another question I had as we've gone through this conversation is, if you are a person like me today, I've seen a person or two. I did go to the grocery store for lunch. I got some things and I came back. But for the most part, I'm going to be here by myself all day doing some interviews. I'm going to do some computer work. If you roll physical touch in the morning and you're like, I'm not planning to leave the house, do you roll again? What's your suggestion there?
They used to have AT&T had a slogan that said, reach out and touch someone with a telephone. Why couldn't you use that, James? And use that type of thing. Sometimes just touching people with a note or just a kind text or just something, you have to do it creatively in that way. Sometimes you can't do the physical touch, but you still can touch them. And touch is really kind of a physical thing. But you figure out a way to send love out in a way that you're touching the hearts of people. And it's almost as physical as it is spiritual in that way, that a spiritual touch, to me, is almost more powerful. You'll remember it a whole lot longer than any physical touch at all. So make it a spiritual touch, a spiritual, physical type of touch. They're real. They're absolutely real. When you feel someone speak truth and your spirit agrees with that truth, it's a wash. It goes from the head to the toes. It's a wash with that feeling that what he's speaking is truth. He's saying something that resonates with me, something that reconciles with me. And when that happens, that's a physical touch of the very best kind. That's when your memory of that incident will stay with you much longer than any words anybody would ever say.
That's good. See, that's me thinking literal and linear again. And so now we've transcended that and we can get the job done. So thank you for that. And I would imagine in this work, developing your book, developing the game, that you have probably made associations and also developed relationships with marriage counselors and therapists. And what's that feedback been like when you do work with them? Maybe some of the stories that you've heard from them in helping their clients overcome some of their obstacles?
Great question, James. And I've had a few family therapists actually that I've talked with that have great feedback about the dice and about the effects that it's having. But the impetus for the book was from a therapist. I heard him speak at a Chamber of Commerce event, a luncheon, and I thought, he's working with youth. This should be perfect for his program. So I only had the dice at the time. I took the dice to him and showed him how it works. He thought, this is great. But he thought, you need a manual for it. You got to write a book.
Yeah.
And it had been 30 years. 1992 was the first time Dr. Chapman published the 5 Love Language. He says, you absolutely need to do something that will update that. And this really is a totally different application. Instead of somebody telling you their love language and you catering to that, well, you get to the whiny voice of, oh, I told you what my love language is. How come you're not doing it? We don't have to get to that point ever again. Because, like you said, James, we have control over giving love away and responding when it comes our way. That's our lane. That's what we can do. So the therapists, understanding that, really like this. They really like the whole idea of taking responsibility for the love you send out and the way that you respond to it. Great example of this is I'm trying to train this in K through 6 classroom. So as a classroom, and I wish it would be each individual by themselves, but as a class, they roll the dice in the morning. The teacher might take 30 to 45 seconds to say, class, this is the type of behavior we're looking for today. And at the end of the day, then the teacher gives them a journal page. It says, what did we roll today? What opportunities did you see to love in that way today? And then what did you do about those opportunities? Even a 6-year-old can write about this. So the class all does the writing. The teacher does a check mark, sends that page home with the student at night. And those astute parents will actually keep those all year long. Now, what do you have, James? You have a journal, a love journal for that 6-year-old or that 9-year-old or that 5th grader or that 6th grader. You've got a love journal for them. I absolutely wish I had a love journal for myself, because from where I grew up and then going to school, my mother said I was too smart for kindergarten, so she just kept me back. I think being one of the youngest, I think she was just, I don't want to let you go type of thing. I've been in that situation myself. You stay a baby for a little longer, please. And they just baby them. And so they hold them back. So I was one of those. I didn't go to kindergarten, just went to 1st grade. Absolutely loved my 1st grade teacher, Mrs. Rogers. I don't remember my 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade. I do remember 6th grade. I don't remember any of those teachers, but Mrs. Rogers had such a profound impact on me. I wish I had a journal from that 1st grade. As a 6-year-old, I wish I had a journal. This is an opportunity. The second thing it does, James, is makes 6-year-old responsible for their own actions. It used to be the teacher. It used to be the principal. You're responsible for those kids. When I send my kids to school, teacher and principal, you're responsible for the kids. Now, the child, it took me till age 35, James, before I stopped blaming my father for the way I was acting. All that anger, all that criticism, everything, I was blaming him. He had been dead for 7 years by the time I was 35. And it just wasn't fair to him, wasn't fair to me. Why would I be blaming him when he can't even respond to anything that I was blaming him about? Now, instead of waiting until age 35, or maybe never, some people don't ever take responsibility. Now, age 6 and 7 and 8 and 9, 10, 11, these kids are taking responsibility for their own actions. It's really a game changer. If I'm responsible and we're focused, pointing their head toward that side that says, what's right with that person? What can I love about that person? Instead of what's wrong. Now the bullying, now all that misbehaving, that takes a lot of time out of school. All that disciplining takes time. Why would you take teaching time to discipline a child? Unless you have to, obviously. But let's move it away from that discipline, move it to putting the responsibility for behavior back on that child, where it should be anyway. Put it on that child. Let them grow with that responsibility. They'll learn all 5 love languages. They're going to be able to see it and send it and respond appropriately to it. Teaching them that characteristic is not only going to help them in grade school, but junior high, high school, college, maybe their life. This is a habit we really need to teach. And I'm not trying to take a lot of time from the teachers by doing this. It's maybe a minute at the beginning of the day. The last 10 to 15 minutes of the day, James, is already non-productive time. The kids' minds are mush. They've been there all day. I can't learn one more thing. So you really need that decompression activity, which is journal writing. You write in a journal, you have a sigh of relief. It all goes away, and you're just ready for the rest of the day and ready for those kids to be sent home or for their extracurricular activity. You're ready for all that. We just need to instill in children and instill in people the idea that everybody has a value, great value, treat them like that.
To teach this concept to a 6-year-old is, like you said, it's a simple concept that's not easy. And so many things in life are like that. Things are simple, but not easy, because you start to realize quickly throughout the day, maybe, oh, my energy drops and it's harder to do this, but it's still simple enough because you look for the good in people and you show them love in a specific way. Maybe you come across someone you've bumped heads with in the past, and it's simple what you need to do. It might not be easy because you have to swallow your ego, move forward and show them love, and make that decision to do it yourself, take responsibility for yourself. What you've created here sort of forces everyone to have some empathy, maybe look at things from a different perspective, because we've got to go out and live them. We've got to go out and give words of affirmation all day if that's what we rolled on the dice, and trying to figure out how to do that. Just trying to, okay, I was about to do an act of service, but really what I need to shift my attention to here is word of affirmation. How would I put that together? Okay, for me, I would fumble through it a little bit and it might get awkward, but I would do it. I would be genuine about it, which is probably going to be the awkward part. It's done. And I said, okay, that went okay. Now I know how to do it better next time. And I would go out and do it better in the next interaction. So it's working those muscles that we're not used to working. And that's, I think, one of the most beautiful parts of the game is you can't just default to your old habits.
It's absolutely true, James. And it's just something about helping others have a happy day. And just that focus of, I'm trying to uplift someone, trying to help them on their way. Love to me is more of a healing type. Who can I heal today? If you're sitting in your house waiting for love to come to you, you need to stop that. Because you just walk out your door, you walk down any neighborhood in America, any neighborhood in the world, there is pain under every roof. Some sort of pain. Find someone, if you have to, find someone that is feeling a little lower down than you might be and lift them up. They're all out there. In my neighborhood, there's actually an assisted living facility just a couple blocks away from me. Once in a while, I'll go down and I'll play puzzle with those guys. They just love to have somebody to talk to, somebody to tell their life stories from, somebody to spend some time with, somebody just to be there with them. And it's all about spending time or serving them in that particular way. There's lots of things that you can do that way. But I think that stepping outside of that box, as you mentioned, stepping outside that rut, outside of that lane of what you think that you like or what you like to give away, step out of that and stretch yourself a little bit. There's going to be that learning curve, and it's going to be a little steep learning curve, but it's not so steep that you can't make it, and you get over it within a 30-day period. If you'll consistently roll the dice over 30 days and do what it says to do, go out and do that day, you're going to learn all 5 love languages just by giving it away. Then your vision becomes a whole lot easier, gives you that peripheral vision to say, they're loving on me, I can respond.
Practice makes perfect. And a lot of the conversations I have on this podcast is getting over old programming, but also getting over old habits. And the necessary part of that is getting uncomfortable or being willing to get uncomfortable. Because for me, words of affirmation, that is an uncomfortable place often. It depends on the context, but sometimes it just doesn't come top of mind. Sometimes I'm thinking in my head, oh yeah, go you, I'm proud of you. And it never comes out of my mouth. So reminding myself, if I'm thinking something that is words of affirmation, I need to make sure I hear myself say it to the other person within earshot and make it happen. So thank you for that reminder.
And on that note, James, I think that it's really, really important to verbalize all the good that you see. Those words of affirmation, just verbalize what that checker at the store is doing. When you're all by yourself on Wednesdays inside doing podcasts and you go out to the store, verbalize that. Or when you're in the podcast, find something good about that person that you're doing the podcast with, verbalize that, and you can do your words of affirmation all day long.
That's great. Now, if someone is listening and they're like, oh, I want to check this out, where's the best place for them to go to get this game, get the dice, get the journal, all the things?
Well, my website is really the best place. My website is rolloflove.com, and I did a play on words, James. Instead of ROLL, like you would a dice, I did ROLL is, again, outside of you. It's hard to change circumstances outside of you, but we all have the ability to change ourselves within. That's why I spell it ROLE of love. ROLE of love.com.
I love that.
You'll find the book, you'll find the journal, the dice are there. If you're auditory and you like to listen to books or like to listen to podcasts and you don't watch them that often, but you just like listening, you might want the Audible book. I've made it in Audible format on Amazon. So you'll have to type in my name, Paul Zolman, on Amazon, because if you type in Roll of Love, you're going to get love this, love that, love a million things off on Amazon. And you're not, it's going to be a needle in the haystack. Paul Zolman on Amazon will take you right to the book. And I've got the book and journal there, but I've also got the book in Kindle and Audible format.
I'll have all of those links in the show notes. So if anyone's listening and wants quick access, just hit the show notes and you're there.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think is important for people to hear?
You know what, James? Love has been around a long time. And there's an old classic, The Sound of Music, that there's a great line in Rodgers and Hammerstein Sound of Music that Rolf is singing to Liesel. She's in the second story of that Von Trapp mansion. And he sings a song, and part of the lyrics of the song say, love in the heart wasn't put there to stay. Love isn't love till it's given away. We really need to practice just giving it away, practice sending it out. We have great capacity. I think that as you do it, you're going to learn that I can do more. Every day you're going to say, oh, I could have done more. I can send more out. And we don't know the capacity of love. We can't have that scarcity mindset. It has to be a mindset of abundance. There is an abundance to love that you can give away. And once you do it, someday it's coming back. And it'll come back just in time, just when you feel low, just when you need it.
That's a great way to end things. Paul Zolman, thank you so much for being here on A Joyful Rebellion, and can't wait to get this message out to everyone who will listen.
Thank you, James. It's been a pleasure to be with you today.
Thanks for joining me today. If you've enjoyed this content and are thinking about ways to share your story or even get more joy out of your life, I have a free ebook that I'd love to share with you. It's called Plotting Your Joyful Rebellion, and I designed it to be a 5-step field guide full of guerrilla warfare tactics to help prepare you to overthrow any of the parts of your life you feel the call to rebel against. Go to ajoyfulrebellion.com and click on the link right there at the top to claim your free copy of the book. Again, that's ajoyfulrebellion.com, or simply hit the link at the top of the show notes. What sort of rebellion are you plotting right now? I'd love to hear about it. Connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, or through the website at ajoyfulrebellion.com. Thanks again for listening today, and be sure to stop by next week for another episode full of joyful rebellion.